Welcome to another edition of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and Visa, and I'm your host, Femi Abebefe. Michael, we're a third of the way through the NFL season, and the weeks keep getting faster and faster, man.
Man, it do. I mean, it's amazing, and worlds are colliding, Femi. We've got NBA basketball, bet the Sixers on the under. They look like crap. We got Major League Baseball. We got the Astros, Yankees. We got the Padres, Phillies, right? I guess we got soccer, too, going on. Hockey's going on. Football. I mean, all the worlds are colliding. It's kind of remarkable, isn't it?
It's a lot of fun for us sports viewers here. It's definitely a multi-screen month, the month of October and November as well. It's going to be a multi-screen month. But as always, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us out in all of our numbers, so make sure to do that. If you're a fan of the pod, our producer Stephen Bond with us as well on the ones and twos, Michael. And if you want to tweet at us, you can tweet at Michael at @MLombardiNFL, and you can find me at Femi Abebefe. But Michael, let's start with the NFL owners meetings. They took place this past Tuesday in New York City. And usually the owners meetings aren't very eventful. A couple of nuggets will come out here and there, but nothing that's too headline grabby. But that was until Jim Irsay, the Indianapolis Colts owner, decided to speak on the report that we saw last week with ESPN and Daniel Snyder and the Washington Commanders. Jim Irsay said that there is, quote, merit to removing Daniel Snyder as an owner. This is the first time we've ever heard an owner publicly speak about Daniel Snyder in this manner. What was your reaction when you heard this earlier this week?
I think he spoke for a lot of us. I think he spoke for, what has happened to this franchise. I mean, you got to go back to when this franchise was being sold and Jack Kent Cooke, the son of the owner, Jack Kent Cooke Sr., was in the bidding war, and Snyder was in that bidding war with a guy named Harold Milstein, and Milstein and him were together in a joint at the hip. But then when Milstein was basically getting loans from his father, the owners said, no, that's not going to work. And they basically took on Snyder along with Fred Smith and some other partners who he has since bought out. So one of the reasons that if you go back and read a lot of the Washington Post reporting of when Snyder took this team over and was able to secure it, a lot of it was the threat of lawsuits. And this is still the game that he plays today. And I keep wondering, at the end of the day, what is Daniel Snyder's end game? He's never going to get a stadium. Nobody wants to attach their name to his franchise. I mean, his team's in purgatory. He doesn't want to make a move one way or the other. He's not acting as he did in the past. And I thought Sally Jenkins wrote a great column in the Washington Post yesterday about it. I mean, it's just, to me, it's really unfortunate that the two of the worst owners in the history of owners, the Washington football team has had them. George Preston Marshall, who should be thrown out of the Hall of Fame for what he's done to the league over the race discrimination that he practiced while he was the owner of the Washington Redskins. And then this guy, I mean, it's really sad. And I write about it in my book about Preston Marshall, about how he really was the main person behind the African-American players not being allowed to really participate in the NFL from 36 to 46. And yet we have him in the Hall of Fame. It's almost ridiculous.
Yeah, that's it's an organization that has seen its trials and tribulations. Here's what Colts owner Jim Irsay did say, though, at the Tuesday league meetings in New York. He said, quote, "I just believe in the workplace today, the standard that the Shield stands for in the NFL, that you have to stand for that and protect that. I just think once owners talk amongst each other, they'll arrive at the right decision. My belief is, unfortunately, I believe that's the road we have to go down, this in terms of removing Daniel Snyder. Quote, we just need to finish the investigation, but it's greatly concerning to me, the things that have occurred there over the last 20 years. That is Colts owner Jim Irsay. And Irsay came out and said, hey, Dan Snyder, if you got dirt on me, go ahead and investigate it and do whatever you want to do. All my info is out there. Everybody knows Jim Irsay's past and his battles with addiction, and that's nowhere near to the standard of what Daniel Snyder has been dealing with out there in Washington. And it's the thing, I think the thing that, Michael, to me, that is the most kind of significant about this is that none of the owners really spoke out against Jim Irsay. It was almost as if they were all like, yeah, Jim, we all agree with you, and we're going to kind of stand behind you.
Yeah, I think to me it's kind of hard to argue with, because at the end of the day, even though they revenue share, the fact that we do not have a legitimately loved franchise in our nation's capital is somewhat sad. It's like when the league is always better when the Raiders are good. The league is always better when the Giants are good, or the New York teams are good, the Bears are good. That makes the league. That really brings it up. It makes the ratings even stronger. And so when you have something like Washington, where they've gone from such a wonderful franchise to this mess, really, it's sad. It is sad. And as a kid growing up, as a Redskin fan, those uniforms I loved, and what he's done to the franchise is really been it could be a 30 for 30, but it should be like 120 for 120, because it has gone a pattern of, this isn't just a fender bender, this has been a pattern of reckless behavior since he owned the team, since he's purchased the team.
Do you think this is the beginning of the end?
I don't think. First of all, you need 24 of them to agree on the end, and then you've got to be able to hold up. I'm sure he's going to file a lawsuit against him if they try to throw him out. And he's denied all the ESPN charges. Mm-hmm. That article just didn't appear out of nowhere. Like somebody collaborated with Stefan Wickersham. I mean, he just didn't make that up. He's not a novelist, so he got somebody on the record to say some of that stuff, and some of that were owners. So I think at the end of the day, the money he's taking from the owner's pocket, because he's not putting anything in, is somewhat alarming. I mean, Mike Brown, for whatever you want to say about his franchise, Mike Brown, never really wanted to name the stadium. He wanted to always keep it as Paul Brown Stadium, but he realized the economics of today he needs to do that. So he did. This guy doesn't, he's never going to make any money for the league.
Yeah, Seth Wickersham, Don Van Natta Jr., and also Tisha Thompson were the ones that had the report from ESPN last week. Wickersham and Van Natta Jr. have been busy because they also dropped us a little nugget Tuesday as well from the owners' meeting that sources who have been close to the situation amongst these meetings, but the NFL kind of having to approve Roger Goodell's contract and the extension and all that stuff. It was a 31-1 vote on Tuesday, permitting the compensation committee to open negotiations on a new contract for Commissioner Roger Goodell. Apparently, it got a little heated between Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. The sources, this is from the article, the sources said Kraft joined the overwhelming majority in strong support for the measure, with Jones the lone dissenter in the owners-only session, eventually telling Kraft, quote, "Don't F with me." Kraft replied, "Excuse me," and then Jones said, "Don't mess with me." These are two heavy hitters we know have a lot of power amongst these NFL owners, going toe-to-toe apparently over the commissioner's potential extension.
And they're partners in a lot of businesses together. I mean, they're partners in a lot of things that they do together, the Legends Group. So, yeah, I mean, look, this is an interesting thing to me where, the commissioner gets a lot of credit for the league's success and all the things that are going on, but there's a lot of committees that happen behind the scenes, and I'm sure Jerry feels like all the success, whether it's the revenue generated from the TV deals, he's probably is responsible. So why are we overpaying the position? I think it's probably right, but look, this guy has put a lot of money in these. They're not buying yachts because they're not making a ton of money. I mean, all these owners are buying yachts lately.
And Jones, his whole beef with this whole Goodell extension thing is that he thinks that the bonus for Goodell should be very merit-based and structured based off of financial goals that are set. He, in his opinion, believes, at least according to the report that's sourced, is that things are, quote, vague in terms of Goodell's incentives that he has to hit for the contract. I believe over the past couple of years in the article, it said that Roger Goodell has been compensated. Yeah, for 2020 and 2021, his compensation was nearly $128 million, which is just an obscene amount of money there for Roger Goodell.
But when you're running a multi-billion-dollar company, it's really not. When we all look at that number as a standalone number, but when you're running a multi-billion-dollar company that controls television, that you put a game on TV, it's going to get the highest rating. I mean, you're running these companies, you're keeping order in the company, you're doing the things that are right. I mean, you're not going to get paid $5 million a year. To me, it's a little bit like coaching salaries, and how do you pay a coach who's running an organization completely? How do you pay him $5 or $6 or $7 million a year when the franchise is worth $7 billion? $6 billion, right? Mm-hmm. How do you do that? Like, if he's in charge of it, and I think, to me, that's all proportional.
Jerry, it almost feels like he's like, you know what, we could get anybody to run this thing. Like what are we doing paying this? But, I mean, Goodell, to his credit, has done a pretty good job since taking over. I believe it was 2006 when he took over as the commissioner of the National Football League. And it's been, at least for the owners, they've seen their money continue to multiply over that time period. But Jerry Jones, Robert Kraft, both of their teams hoping to get their quarterbacks back at some point here. Well, the New England one, it's a little bit more murky. We'll get into that a little bit later. But the Dallas Cowboys, Michael, are expecting Dak Prescott to return this week against the Detroit Lions. Dak, of course, had the fractured thumb in week 1 opening night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cowboys have since gone 4-1 since that start. But what are you expecting from Dak in this Cowboys offense with QB1 returning this weekend?
Well, I'm hopeful that we don't have the, your boy Kellen Moore in the basement all of a sudden calling all these plays. We're hoping that they manage the game. They call the game like they've been calling it. I'm hoping McCarthy continues to be the head coach and kind of demand order within the offensive structure of the team. I think, to me, how do we play the game to win this week? How do we control it? We saw New England shut them out. New England controlled the ball for, I think, 35 minutes in that game. They were able to take Detroit out of their game plan, make them play from behind, and, not get into a track meet like Seattle got into or some of these other teams do. So I hope he does that. I really do. And I think we have to forget about how many yards we gain. How do we play the game the right way? We've got a dynamic returner in Turpin. This kid, he went to TCU. He bounced around the world, right? He got, this kid's dynamic, what he brings to the table. So we're going to get great field position. We've got our best 2 players are our running backs. Gallup starting to come along. Lamb. Let's just play within the comforts of our game. Let's get the lead. We got a 20-point advantage at the first quarter, right? And let's let our defense continue to be the shining light here. I hope that's what they do. I hope this isn't a 40-pass game for Dak, because that's not what they need to do.
Like you always say, call the game to win the game and not call the game to put up stats and yards and to go get a head coaching job is what we're hoping for from Kellen Moore.
We don't need you to be brilliant. Like we wrote this week for the Daily Coach about the difference between, simple and complex. And simplicity is harder than complexity because it requires you to not get bored, but it also requires you to be able to adjust the game as the game's going on. And when you're too complex and nobody understands it, then all of a sudden you get into some situations that you can't get out of. And I think Dallas, even though they got behind against Philadelphia, they made that a game. They made that a game. Now, somebody would say, oh, well, Lane Johnson went out of the game. That's why it became a game. No, I don't. Lane Johnson's a really good player, but the right tackle doesn't shift the game, okay? Like, that doesn't really happen. Like, they stayed in the game. I think what happens to the Eagle offense as they take their bye week in the City of Champions here with the Phillies and the Eagles celebrate, I think what happens to Philly is they're like playing an academy team. And so you're not used to the speed of the game, and that's why their second quarter is so dynamic. But once Dallas defense got used to the speed, they played pretty good in that game. They gave up just that 1 touchdown in the second half.
Dak's not the only quarterback, Michael, that's expected to return this week. Tea Tagovailoa, out of the concussion protocol, has now been practicing for a couple of weeks now, expected to start in the Dolphins' home game against the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And for Tua, man, he's just got to stay healthy as far as I'm concerned. What do you think that Tua, who is needed in this Dolphins offense based on the quarterback play that they've gotten over the last few weeks, what are you expecting from him?
Yeah. I thought Skylar Thompson, when he was in the game, was actually playing pretty good. It looked like a pretty good player. But let's just put things in perspective. Throw out the Baltimore game. Throw that out. Throw out the explosive plays, okay? Mm-hmm. Throw that game out. That game, to me, seems like an outlier. Yeah, he scored 20 points against the Patriots. The defense scored 7 in that game. This is the Miami offense I'm talking about. They scored 21 against Buffalo. Buffalo gave them the ball on the 6-yard line. They've scored 15, 17, and 16 points in the last 3 weeks. They have not been explosive. They have not been explosive. For as dynamic as they are with Tyreek Hill and for as unbelievable of the speed that they haven't been explosive. And Tua's going to come back, and he's going to run his RPO game because that's what he does really well. But what worries you as a coach is in the last 3 weeks, Cincinnati, New York, and Minnesota, they've lost their quarterbacks in the first quarter. The quarterback's gotten hit. Mm-hmm. This offensive line hasn't played well. And so how do you run RPOs when the team knows Tua's not running or Tua's going to be very guarded about running? I think this is a delicate balance because if Tua gets hit again and he kind of gets up wobbly,
Yeah.
You think he's playing again this year?
Nope.
I don't either.
No. And nobody wants to see that. And it's hopefully he is all good to go and they're able to protect him. Teron Armstead, their left tackle, he should be back this week after missing last week's game. So we're hoping that Tua can stay healthy.
He'll be in and out of the game all year. I mean, that's just what Armstead at the point in his career where he can't stay healthy. And they're talking about trading Gesicki, which I'm sure they want to do that. I mean, the guy's got 15 catches. They're not really getting, to pay him a franchise number when he's really not making a difference. But like if you shipped him to, like if he were on Baltimore's team with Andrews, see, I think a lot of these teams, especially Baltimore and Tampa, haven't figured out what their quarterbacks need the most. Baltimore signs Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson, like they don't need another outside receiver. That's not going to help Lamar. What they need is a slot receiver and a nickel back to go along with Andrews or another tight end. That's what they need because he wants to throw the ball in the middle of the field. It's the same thing with Brady. Brady needs a tight end that can catch and run routes. He needs a nickel back, James White, Kevin Falk, Shane Vereen, whoever that guy is, put him in there. And he needs a slot receiver. Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, whichever. I mean, these are the names he's got to have. Now, he's got Godwin that he likes in there, but he doesn't have the other two. Giving him an outside receiver doesn't really help him as much as he wants to throw the ball in the middle of the field. And so, to me, those teams should be after Gesicki because Gesicki really, for what he's doing and what they're paying him in Miami, it isn't really worth it.
Well, Michael, the couple of teams on Thursday Night Football need a lot, the Saints and the Cardinals. We'll break down that game on the other side as we take our first break. It's the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. Thursday Night Football, Michael, Amazon Prime. We get the New Orleans Saints visiting the Arizona Cardinals right now at our show sponsor, DraftKings. Cardinals 2.5-point favorites, total 43.5. It's welcome back DeAndre Hopkins after serving his 6-game suspension. And we haven't seen Hopkins in a solid year now. Last year, he was hurt the second half of the season, then gets suspended the first 6 games here. So do you think, Michael, that Hopkins provides a boost for this Cardinals offense?
I mean, he has to. I mean, their leading receiver averages 11.3 a catch, and he's in a boot, Marquise Hollywood Brown. So there's nobody else on the team that's over 9. I mean, that's over 10 yards a catch. Now, I think with Amazon Prime, if they were really a smart marketing team like I believe they are, I think they should give out a discount to the Wizard of Oz this week. They should basically say, you watch the game, the Wizard of Oz for 2 weeks is free in Technicolor, whatever the hell it is. We can watch the mayor of Munchkin Land go parading around because it kind of goes hand in hand. Don't you think? We're off to the Yellow Brick Road. We can watch him do it. Don't you think that's a good idea? Like, why not? Why not use some synergy in this? You got all this. You got this library of films at your disposal. $1.99, buy the Wizard of Oz. Why not?
Yeah.
Watch the game, buy the Wizard of Oz. You could tune it in between. We could all sing, "Let's go." We're going to Lollipop Land. I mean, I went back and watched that Seattle game again. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I don't know if the guy can play any worse or with any less effort. I can't wait to watch him on TV. I can't wait to see tonight if somebody's going to actually say, he's not playing very good. Somebody's going to say, the guy's averaging 5.8 yards per attempt. Like 5.8 yards per attempt. Now, I know yards per attempt is down. We'll get to that in the next block. But 5.8, Femi?
It's bad.
Are you kidding me?
It's bad. It's really bad, and maybe Hopkins coming back, because I know like some of the numbers, the on-off numbers show that when Hopkins is on the field, this Cardinals offense is one of the better offenses in the league. But you mentioned the injuries they have on the offensive line. Now Marquise Hollywood Brown is out, so I'm not sure how much Hopkins coming back is going to help after they've lost so many guys, and it seems like there's a clear disconnect between Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray on what they should be doing to try to move the ball down the field.
Well, I mean, I think, look, there's always going to be a disconnect because Murray doesn't execute. And clearly he doesn't understand the game. He doesn't play, as instinctively as he needs to play, And so I think it's just pretty clear, that he doesn't really have a feel for the game. He scrambles. He's running around, doesn't have 2 hands on the ball. Here we are. We're driving down the field against Seattle. We got a chance to score. Oh, yeah, I don't have 2 hands on the ball. I let it go. I mean, do you realize how bad they are in points per play? They're at .26. Pittsburgh and them are exactly the same. Pittsburgh's playing Trubisky and a rookie quarterback. Meanwhile, you're playing a guy that you give $250 million to, and you have this exact same points per play as they do. I mean, it's kind of hard. It's hard, and in fairness to Cliff, last year they were averaging 0.39 points per play. They're down 1-3 in points per play this year, and you didn't change quarterbacks.
So what do you think is happening? Do you think Kyler is just regressing, or is there something else at play? Because I mentioned last week when we did the podcast that the offensive line and all the injuries that they have in Cliff's scheme not really being able to mask some of the holes you have once you start to lose guys through the course of the season. But it's the same coach, it's the same quarterback, and the production has dropped off precipitously. So what is the issue here in Arizona?
I think it's pretty clear. I think that teams defend him a certain way. I think teams rush him a certain way. I think teams say, okay, look, we know you're going to carry the ball in a certain amount of plays. We know you're not going to be really get after it. So if we can keep you in the pocket and make you play quarterback and make you have to see down the field and keep containment on you, we got a chance. I mean, we got a really good chance. He's their leading rusher with 233 yards, averages 6'1", but he's not making those plays that he did with his feet. And then when he gets to third down, he can't convert a third down. I've never loved their team. I thought A.J. Green was done last year, and they signed him back. Mm-hmm. They trade for Hollywood Brown. Again, I don't know. Ertz kind of gives them some inside perceiving, but he averages 8.5 a catch. Mm-hmm. I just think it's how people play you. I think people adjust to you. This is what makes them giving this contract with 2 years left on the deal so remarkable. Like, why did we have to do it? Like, why? Why couldn't you just let him continue to play? Like, he didn't win you a Super Bowl. How about this? A.J. Green averages. Think about this. A.J. Green averages. They signed him back. He's got 10 catches, them. His longest catch of the year is 10 yards.
Yikes.
He's got 56 yards in catches.
That's
terrible. That's terrible.
That's not terrible. It's disgusting. It's like, what are you doing? Like, then Rondale Moore, he's supposed to be this explosive player. He's got 16. He averages 8 yards a catch. Like, at some point, are these players that bad? Or is somebody not getting – it's the point guard. It's where's the ball going to? And, well, it's interesting to see what happens tonight if somebody at least will say, hey, look, he's got to play better. I mean, they didn't want to put that clause in his contract because he was a study guy. I mean, we forget about that, right? Everybody got so angry about that clause that was agreed on by the player, by the team, and by the agent who represents everybody. And yet nobody's bringing that. Maybe he's just not prepared to play all the time.
Well, the homework clause got taken out of the contract. I don't know if it was online bullying or what happened, but it got taken out of the contract. But on the New Orleans side tonight, Andy Dalton, it sounds like he's going to get the start once again. Jameis Winston returned to the practice field but didn't practice in full, so it sounds like they're going to go with Dalton, who's already banged up in his own right with a back issue of his own. But no Michael Thomas, no Jarvis Landry. Andrews Pete, I believe, will be out as well. No Marshawn Lattimore for New Orleans. Who wins this game?
To me, I had this. My line was 2.56. The line's been at 2.5, all pretty much moving back and forth. Mm-hmm. Look, I thought New Orleans had a great opportunity to beat Cincinnati last week. They just didn't get a stop at the end of the game. They're driving the ball down the field. They got a chance to take the lead in the game. They have the lead, and they have a chance to extend the lead, and they can't get the touchdown. They got to settle for a field goal, and Cincinnati makes the one explosive play, and they weren't able to do it. I think if New Orleans is able to get some pressure on him, force him to play in the quarterback, force him to beat him, I think this is going to be hard. But New Orleans defense without Lattimore has struggled. Yeah. They've blown too many coverage. They gave up a touchdown pass to Mixon on an under route. Werner, the linebacker, should have just carried him in. They're not really detailed enough on what they need to do. And so it's going to be hard. And without their weapons offensively, I think it's really challenging. But Kamara looked to me last week like the Kamara of old. Like, he looked like he was back a little bit, and they're going to need him. But I'll say this about Arizona, Fem. Mm-hmm. They're playing better defensively the last 3 weeks than they have all season.
All right. Well, Vance Joseph has turned things around after they got lit on fire by Kansas City and Las Vegas to start the season. But, Michael, let's take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to ask the question, why is scoring down here on the GM Shuffle? All right, Michael, it's a question that I think a lot of people have been kicking around and wondering whether if you're just the average NFL fan or if you're an NFL bettor or what happened, you just like to watch football. But scoring in the league across the board has been down. And you sent me some interesting notes and stats that really shows this. The average team averaging 21.6 points per game, with the exception of 2017. Every season at least has been 22.6, and there's some other numbers that we'll get into as well. But just from a more general standpoint, Michael, why do you think offenses have been struggling so far here in 2022?
Typically when teams went for it on fourth down, it was such a shock that, their conversion rate was a little higher. Right now, there's 12 teams. There's probably more than 12 because they're all tied for it that are 50% on fourth down at the best. I mean, that's it. That's it. Everything else is less. I mean, Indianapolis is at 16%. Jacksonville, who they continue to go for it, they're at 38 point. They continue to pass up field goals. They're at 38.6%. We talk about the Arizona Cardinals who passed up points last week. And they're at 54.5%. That's not even a good number, right? That's not a good number. When you go for it on fourth down, the old rule was if you went for it on fourth down, what's my chances of making the field goal and what's my chances of converting? Well, I mean, with some of these teams, what you have to get to, there's only 3 teams in the 70s, the Rams, Vegas, and Minnesota that are converting at 70%. Philly's at 69, Atlanta's at 66. Cleveland and Tampa are at 60. Kansas City and Buffalo. Those are the only teams, that's 10 teams that are 60% or above. So when you turn down points like Arizona did, or you turn down points like Jacksonville does at a high rate to take a less play, Jacksonville turns down a 45-yard field goal. Their success rate converting fourth down is 38.6. A 45-yard field goal should be 75% make, right? Shouldn't it be?
Yeah, around there.
In a dome with no wind. Like nobody discusses. We just accept to go for it on fourth down like it's no big deal. And you would think the networks would put up, okay, probability, because they love probability, right? They love this probability stat. Probability of making the field goal is 84%. Probability of getting on fourth down is what? Why not? If we're so analytically inclined to just fall into the analytics, why don't we see the numbers? And so you want to know why points are down? Because people bafangul with points. They just flick their nose up to it. They don't give a shit. I don't need 3 points. Doug Peterson, I don't need 3 points. I'm 38.4% on fourth down, but I don't need 3 points. I'd rather give the ball back to them with no points. That's what he's saying. That's what you're saying. And then here's the other thing. When you don't get it on fourth down, why doesn't that count as the turnover? They just turned the ball over. Why are we so stoic in how we determine it's only a fumble or it's only an interception? No, missed field goals are turnovers. Fourth downs are turnovers. It's actually, the terminology is to turn over on downs. It's turned over on downs. You didn't get the first, you went for it. I mean, think about it. I still can't believe Kevin Stefanski went for it on fourth down. Then he comes back the next week, and he hurries up and gets to the line, and he gets stuffed again in his own in New England territory. Turned down 3 points there.
And the thing with because I remember you're talking about the probabilities, and I guess why I think some of the teams would lean towards going for it is because clearly they want the touchdown, because 7 points, we all can do the math, is more than 3 points. But it is the factor of, all right, if we don't get this, we're also giving the team a shorter field, or we're giving them an advantageous spot here. But I do think it's kind of like a risk-reward assessment that you're trying to do there with do we go for it on 4th and 2 and then try to continue this drive to maybe get 7, versus do we go and kick the field goal, which if it's a 45, 48-yard field goal, maybe it's around that 70, 75% to go ahead and make it. Because we've seen sometimes the field goals are not guarantees as well, Michael, with some of the field goal kickers that we have in the league running around. I mean, if you don't have a Tucker, a McPherson, or one of those guys, you can only feel but so confident in your kicker.
I agree completely with that. If I had Matt Amendola as my kicker, I would never kick. I mean, exactly. if I was a general manager and I said, okay, Matt Amendola is my kicker, I would say, Matt, don't even dress for the game. We don't need you. Like, I wouldn't even let him kick.
Don't even dress.
Like, seriously, I've seen enough of Matt Amendola. God bless. I'm sure he's a great kid.
Yes.
But I don't want him as my kicker. Okay. Like, I'm with you. I want to go out there, but like the Cardinals saw Amendola kick in pregame against the Eagles. The television brought it up. They showed it on the screen. Mm-hmm. He was shanking the ball to the right. Were we surprised he shanked it again? No, of course not. But why is he still on the team? What's he still doing on the team? Kyler slid, which cost them a chance to even get closer, even win the game. So I'm with you. Look, I get it. If you got Justin Tucker and you're turning down points, shame on you. Shame on you. Mm-hmm. A league that's games are decided by 4 points or less and scoring is down, now we know why. You continually want to do it on fourth down, go ahead. You do it in your own territory, like Stefanski. What's the reward for Stefanski doing it in his own territory? What does he get, 3 more plays?
Yeah, I think it's all circumstantial based on
and it's
your
all
roster,
game related.
It's all game
related.
Yes.
There's no way. People say to me all the time, "Well, you're too hard on Staley. He's really smart." Okay,
no, he's not.
This is a line I learned. If he's so smart, show me one smart thing he's done. Not on defense. I don't see it on the scheme on defense. Mm-hmm. Tell me one smart decision he's made in a game that I said, okay, that's really good. To not punt the ball back away from Cleveland. I mean, that kid could have made that. I mean, so I think that's why scoring's down. I think people are turning points down. It's pretty obvious.
Well, you also noted the yards per pass attempt are the lowest in over a decade, and then also the league-wide yards per carry are some of the highest. So the passing and the rushing, it's almost like the cyclical effect of these defenses that you noted that have been kind of built to now stop the pass, can't really stop the run.
They can't stop the run. People are playing more 7-man fronts, one gap short, so you can run the ball, right? I mean, when you watch the Texans, they're in a 7-man front. They try to play man-to-man early in the year. They couldn't. Now they're back to playing the camp. So it's all about that. And most defensive coaches feel like the offense they'll get tired of running it. And the other problem is because of the run games are so everybody's an offset back, everybody's faking the inside handoff. I mean, if you went back to a 2-back run game, if you lined up like the Raiders do and New England does at times into a 2-back run, they don't even know how to fit on a 2-back run. I mean, go back and watch the Raider-Chief game and watch the Chiefs try to play the 2-back runs in that tape. I mean, Jacobs was great, don't get me wrong, but there were holes to go through in that tape that were amazing because they didn't know how to really fit on 2-back because they never practice against 2-back runs. Their teams never really run it. So it gives to me, this is where when everybody zigs, we should zag. To me, Justin Fields should have a 2-back run team. Because we need to be able to get to utilize diversity within our run game. We know this. Running doesn't solve the problem. Running doesn't score points. But Philly's run game is hard to duplicate unless you have a quarterback like Hurts who can run, who's big enough to handle that role. And the quarterback runs, I think, are another reason why these numbers are up.
I completely agree with you. The NFL is very cyclical. Everyone was stopping the run 10, 15, 20 years ago. Then the passing game got implemented with Andy Reid and what he's been doing. And then all the passing offenses took over. And then now everyone defends the pass. And now if you can run the football, you have the advantage there. So zigging when people
which Miami can't do. Miami can't run the ball, right? Miami struggled to run the ball. And now Miami, I just read you Miami's scoring totals. And if you ask any fan on the street what you think Miami's scoring totals would be, if I said, other than one game, has Miami scored over 22 points, the answer would be probably, oh, yeah, sure. They don't score because people won't let them have that big play.
Yeah, that's a big deal with being able to stay balanced and run the football. But, Michael, let's take our last break on the other side. We'll run down Sunday's slate here on the GM Shuffle. All right, Michael, let's take a look at Sunday's card here in Week 7 of the National Football League. We talked a little bit about Lions, Cowboys in that game, but I wanted to ask you about this Colts and Titans game, the AFC South matchup. The Colts wrapping up another AFC South series here. It's kind of weird how they've played all these games in division so early on, but Indianapolis 2.5-point underdogs in Nashville against Tennessee, total 42.5. Are the Colts starting to turn things around here, Michael? Should we be believing in our Indianapolis Colts?
Well, I me't look, they threw it over 50 times in the last game. They kept Matt Ryan from actually getting killed, so that was a step. They gave up a ton of big runs, and the last time they played, they lost by 7 at home to the Titans, and the Titans didn't even score in the second half, right? And when you look at the Titans are a hard team to handicap because their numbers are really bad. Ryan Tannehill's not playing well at all, right? And all the numbers say Indianapolis is the better team. Yards per play, they're close. Offensively, Tennessee averages 4.9 yards per play. But where Tennessee is it gets an advantage is they're very effective in points per play. Where that's where they really they maximize it. And they're able to be very effective when they need to be effective. And I think these are always hard games. Last year, I don't think the Colts were tough enough. They get Taylor back. That should help them but they got to handle this front of Tennessee. I think it's a close game, and Tennessee has just an ability to win these kind of games. It's really kind of strange how they do it. My hat's off to Vrabel because they're not explosive at all. They're not. They don't make any explosive plays, but they find a way to win games.
I think it's going to be a really close game. I bet Indianapolis at +3 when the line was at 3. I think the Colts win, but it's going to be a close field goal game either way. So I figured, hey, might as well go ahead and grab the
I have it as a 2.818 game, 2.18 game. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in that, and the line's coming to that 2 number more than anything.
Yeah, I completely agree there. Giants and the Jaguars, Michael. The New York Giants 5-1 right now in second place in the NFC East, only behind the undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. They're 3-point underdogs against the Jacksonville Jaguars, total at 42. Are the G-men being disrespected?
Well, I mean, again, when you look at the numbers in this game, right, when you just compare the numbers on defensive points per play, opponent points per play, yards per play, you compare all those things, third down conversions, red zone scoring, you look at all these numbers, and other than the Giants are really good at third down defense, they're one of the best third down defenses in football. I think they're 4th overall. Their red zone is the 4th best red zone. So that's where they keep you out. And when you look at all the numbers, you say, well, it's not surprising that the team that's 2-4 is favored over the team that's 5-1, playing at home and all that. Mm-hmm. But the team that's playing at home, other than the one game they played at home against Indianapolis, haven't really played a game to where they've played to win. They continually try to get away from the run game. They have all these exotic plays. They don't really have a middle-of-the-field passing game. I think they threw an out over to the left sideline last week, but I kept out watching the tape saying, like, where's the other than screens, and they've got 17,000 screens, like, where is the passing game? Think about it. I mean, Lawrence only threw 2 incomplete passes last week and lost. This will be, to me, what I was disappointed with last week and the last 2 weeks has been Jacksonville's defense hasn't played to the level. That front's got to win the game for them. If that front doesn't make Daniel Jones play fast, they won't win.
Boy, I think the Giants...
You taking them? What are you doing? Are you taking the Giants?
I took the points with the Giants, and I don't really regret it. I don't love it, but I don't think Jacksonville's shown enough to justify being a favorite. And I understand why Jacksonville's a favorite because you mentioned the underlying statistics. The Giants just get outgained yards per play in damn near every game they play other than against the Green Bay Packers, funny enough. But I just don't think Jacksonville's justified to be a 3-point favorite in any game right now, just based on what we've seen over the last few weeks here. But what about the other New York team, Michael? The New York Jets taking on the Denver Broncos in the Rocky Mountains. Yeah. Denver 1-point favorites, total 38.5. We don't know if Russell Wilson's going to play. Is it going to be Brett Rippon? Russell is pushing to play with the hamstring injury. He's already dealing with the shoulder issue as well. But the Jets and that defense are coming to town and looking to improve on their 4-2 record.
On Russell, I was going through my notes of, like, I have this one document that I always go through as, like, it basically is the blueprint for what you want at every position. And one of the things that we would always have in that blueprint, which we would give out to scouts, was the age of a player when there was starting to be a decline. And at quarterback, it was 31 to 36. And anytime you got at 36, that quarterback was going to hit a wall. Right? We used to call it hit the wall. And so you always were concerned when you're in that sweet spot. Now, I think what's happened to us is Brady and Breeze have created this father time illusion that 36 number doesn't matter anymore. Well, it does. I mean, if you look at some of these guys when they get to 30, and I think Russell's one of those guys. His body's breaking down. It's pretty clear. Was hurt last year. He's hurt this year again. Doesn't have a hamstring. To me, doesn't look like the same strength on his arm that he did at one time, doesn't move nearly as well. I mean, finally, the national media is finally saying maybe they've really got ripped off in that trade. Shocking, right? So, I mean, this to me, if he plays, you got to think the Jets can dominate the front. The Jets' defensive front can dominate the Broncos' offensive line. And I think ultimately, can the Broncos dominate the Jets' offensive line? I think whatever quarterback play, if Zach Wilson plays like sometimes we suspect him to play where he turns the ball over, Denver can win the game.
Yeah.
But I don't trust Denver at all. I really don't. I have this as a 3.31 game, Denver being the home favorite with the home field. And all the money, Femi, has come in. I think this is one of the lowest. I think 12% of the money is on Denver. That's it. Nobody's betting Denver. That's why the number's down to 1.
Nobody wants anything to do with Denver after what they've seen in the 4 primetime games over 6 weeks for the Broncos. But Russell's former team, the Seattle Seahawks, are proving to be a frisky underdog, and they're an underdog once again in Los Angeles against the Chargers. 5-point dogs with our show sponsor, DraftKings. Total 50.5 with Geno and that offense really getting it going. Chargers, we're expecting them to have a little bit more success against Seattle's defense. How do you see this one shaking out?
I don't like it for the Chargers. I mean, I think they'll move the ball in the Chargers. J.C. Jackson got benched last week. I mean, Geno Smith's playing really good. I mean, say whatever you want. They're playing really good. Walker's a really good back. The 2 rookie tackles hang in there. You know, they got to do a good job on Khalil Mack. They got to make sure they take care of him. But I think Seattle will move the ball. I think this will be – now, can Seattle stop them? That's going to be a hard thing to do. But you know, I mean, Seattle kind of hangs around. I kind of had this game as a 5.81 game. It opened up at 7, Femi. It opened at 7 to start the week, and it's been nothing but Seattle money coming in on it. I think that these are the kind of spots I don't trust the Chargers. I don't know about you. I love Herbert, but I don't trust the Chargers in these spots. I don't think they put teams away or they take control of the game. I think there's plays that you can make against them.
Yeah, I don't think their defense is good enough to cover this number. Also on the Seattle front, the rookie cornerback, Tariq Woolen, have you been seeing his tape, Michael? 4 interceptions, leading the league in interceptions. He has a couple fumble recoveries, a pick 6, a blocked field goal.
Playing great.
This guy's awesome.
I mean, he's playing really, really well. And you know, they had 6 sacks last week in the game against the Mare. They had 6 sacks. I mean, they got after it. I mean, they're not great on defense, but this is, I mean, look, Pete Carroll's a really good coach. I mean, everybody gets mad at Pete Carroll's management, and he takes so much shit for not running the ball in the Super Bowl when it was the right call. But, I mean, the guy gets his teams to play better. This is what we're looking for as bettors and people that are watching your team. You're looking for what team is improving as the year goes along. And I think that that's something that's really important. And we always remember last week's game like it's really, that's going to be. No, that's not always what's going to happen last week's game. Last week's game is just last week's game. Put that aside. How is the matchup this week? What does it look like? And how is it going to get handled? And I think when you watch these teams and you see kind of how it goes, I think ultimately the teams that improve, the teams that practice, that continually try to get better every week are the ones that you see. And I think when you watch this team, like, look, the one thing I always look for is when I watch teams get better is are they improving in rushes and completions? Are they stopping rushes and completions? And I think Seattle's proven they're getting better in that area.
Seattle, I think they hit that draft class out of the park there with about 4 or 5 guys who are impact starters already right now. That's a team that I've circled for next year, Michael, potentially to go ahead and be a bet-on team to do some pretty good things because I think they have a young nucleus that's going to take them into another stratosphere here. And the final game, Michael,
they got a ton of picks. I mean, God, they got so many. I mean, give Schneider credit. I mean, took a lot of shit. I mean, like I said on this pod, I couldn't go on vacation if Geno Smith was my starter. Man, was I wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy has played really well, and he's going to play good against the Chargers too.
Yeah, and they could either give him an extension or maybe go ahead and get one of those young quarterbacks that's playing in college football on Saturdays right now. The Super Bowl 54 rematch, Michael, is the prime and premier game this week in San Francisco. The 49ers hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City 2.5-point favorites, total 48.5. Which team do you trust most to bounce back after last week's losses?
I trust the Chiefs. I think it's hard to beat Andy twice in a row. And I mean, look, I don't think Mahomes, you can count on him to make mistakes. And plus, I think you got to be really, before you bet this game, I think you got to be really careful to see the injury report. Because last week, you got to just throw that Falcon game out. They were not at full strength last week. That wasn't the case. If they have their defensive players back, then this is going to be a game against a really good offense, against a really good defense, right? I mean, the 49ers only allowed 2.4 points per play. They only allow 4.2 yards per play. They're remarkable defensively, but when they have their B unit out there, they can't be remarkable. This is in college where you have better players that keep playing. So, I mean, to me, in games like this, I always favor the home team and the defense. That's typically where I would go. However, that being said, I think it's a little concerning because I don't know if all the defensive players are going to play for San Francisco.
This is a game that I have bet, Michael, and I took the Niners +3 when it was +3 earlier this week because I think we're going to get a good injury report. Just reading the tea leaves, some of the beat writers in the Bay Area, it sounds like Trent Williams should be back on that offensive line. He means a lot to them. Nick Bosa should be back. I think Trevarius Ward as well in the secondary should be good to go. I think we're going to get a pretty good injury report by the time we get to Friday. I think the Niners win. I think they have the better defense in the run game, and that allows them to keep Mahomes off of the field. Give me the Niners to pull off the small upset against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Fem. I love how you're thinking. That's good.
That's what we got to do.
I mean, I think a lot of it's going to come down to, look, I think that everybody says, well, it's how Jimmy plays. This Niner team is not – I mean, Jimmy played – they had 3 turnovers last week, 1 at the end of the half, and there were too many drop balls in that game. They had a lot of drops in that game. The Niners' success is going to be how Jimmy complements the defense, not how Jimmy plays. That's going to be the key to their success because this defense can carry them a long, long way. And I can promise you this, in October, nobody wants to play this defense come January if they're healthy. Nobody does.
Oh, no.
Nobody does, including the Super Bowl champs Eagles. Nobody wants to play them.
Hang the banner out there in Philly, Michael.
It's already up. It's already up.
Well, let me know when the parade. Let me know when the parade gets going, and then I'll come up.
We got
I'll
the
come
Phillies. Phillies are in it. We got the Eagles. Now, the Sixers. That was just a blurb in the road. They're going to be great, even though Embiid turned the ball over 6 times and gave up how many points to Boston? It's supposed to be the best defensive team in all of basketball. Doc says he's not worried, though. I'm worried about Doc, but he says he's not worried. Okay, we'll go on from there.
Well, that does it for this week's edition of the podcast, Michael. Fun as always. We'll be back Monday to recap everything from week number 7. Thank you to DraftKings and VSiN. As always, thank you to our producer, Stephen Bond, with us on the ones and twos. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And, Michael, I'll talk to you on Monday.
Thank you so much, Femi. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.